What does it take to turn a commuter school into an economic engine? Like, when most people think about a local community college, the image that usually comes to mind is just highly transactional.
Right, very utilitarian.
Exactly. You picture a place where you commute in, take your classes, maybe grab a coffee from a vending machine, earn a degree, and then you just leave. I mean, it's a pit stop on the way to somewhere else.
Yeah, it's viewed as this mechanism for individual credentialing. You put in the time, you get the paper, and you move on.
Perhaps an educational utility. But what happens when an institution decides that, well, being a utility just isn't enough? What happens when a college decides its actual job is to become the absolute beating heart of an entire region?
That is a massive shift in perspective.
It really is. So welcome to the Deep Dive. We are thrilled you're here with us today because today we are looking at a true story of transformation. We're exploring how a local institution evolves from a simple, educational facility into the lifeblood of a community.
And we actually have a really fascinating case study anchoring our exploration today.
We do. We are grounding this entire deep dive in a single source. It's an official news release dated April 7, 2026.
Right.
And it's an announcement celebrating the 50th anniversary of the foundation of Fulton-Montgomery Community College, or FMCC. It's a golden milestone. 50 years of impact.
Which is huge for any local organization.
Absolutely. Okay, let's unpack this because, on its face, a 50th anniversary press release sounds like standard corporate backpadding. Just a cake, some balloons, maybe a nice speech.
Yeah,
right?
The usual PR stuff.
Exactly. But reading through the actual mechanics described here, it poses a much deeper philosophical question, like, what does it actually take to build a legacy that lasts half a century?
That is exactly the right question to ask. Because if you look closely at the framework they are presenting, you realize this isn't just a celebratory announcement. It really functions as a masterclass in the mechanics of community philanthropy and long-term vision. It strips away all that marketing speak and reveals the actual blueprint of how you sustain an institution through 50 years of massive cultural and economic shifts.
Yeah, which is not easy.
No, not at all. It's about leveraging resources in a highly specific, very strategic way.
So let's go back to the beginning to understand that blueprint.
Yeah.
Because this foundation was established in 1976. And right from the jump, they outlined a really bold two-part purpose.
Yeah, they were very clear.
Right. First, to strengthen the college's connection to the region. And second, to generate private support that expands opportunities for students, faculty, staff, and, well, the wider community.
And the foundational premise here is that they step in to make tangible outcomes possible, where, and I'm quoting here, traditional funding alone may fall short.
Right.
And we really need to pause on that phrase, where traditional funding alone may fall short, because that is the crux of the entire operation.
Yeah, it makes me think of it like this. If you picture the college as a car, the traditional funding, like the state budgets, the tuition fees, that's the engine.
Okay, I like that.
It keeps the car running, it covers the overhead, pays the light bill, keeps the basic classes operating so people can actually get their degrees. But the foundation, this private support, that acts as a turbo boost.
Right.
It's what allows the car to suddenly accelerate and do things a standard sedan just wasn't built to do. But I do have to push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Because I'm looking at this setup and thinking, if the college already exists, right? If it already has state funding and tuition coming in, why is an entirely separate foundation necessary to connect it to the region?
It's a fair question.
Shouldn't a community college just naturally be connected to its own backyard by virtue of being there?
What's fascinating here is how the underlying philosophy answers that exact question. And it really has to do with the profound difference between just existing in a place and anchoring a place.
Anchor.
Yes. The goal stated here is for FM to become a cultural and civic anchor for the region. A traditional budget pays for the baseline mechanics of education. But holistic education, the kind that elevates a college to an anchor, requires entirely different building blocks.
Okay, how so?
Well, think about what an anchor actually does. It implies weight, stability, and a gathering point during unpredictable times. You simply cannot build a civic anchor solely on tuition dollars or the whims of state budget allocations.
Because those are reactive.
Precisely. State budgets and tuition streams are inherently reactive and highly volatile. They fluctuate based on, annual enrollment dips, changing demographics, or even just shifts in the political winds.
Right. So if your funding gets cut, you shrink.
Exactly. A foundation, however, creates a proactive pool of resources. It allows the institution to stop playing defense and start saying, we aren't just going to offer baseline classes, we are going to build permanent culture here.
I really like that distinction. Existing versus anchoring, playing defense versus playing offense. And you can really see that shift from the theoretical purpose, this whole turbo boost idea, to the actual concrete reality when you look at what this foundation has built over those 50 years.
Oh, absolutely.
They've generated, processed, and allocated gifts to fund a massive variety of initiatives.
The scope is incredibly broad, which is very intentional.
It really is. It's not just one pet project. They list scholarships, academic innovation, new technology, faculty and staff development, athletic programs, endowments, and major capital projects.
And we are talking about some serious state-of-the-art facilities that have been built.
Right. There is a cybersecurity lab, simulation labs for healthcare programs, the FAM Financial Technology Center.
Don't forget the Perella Gallery.
Yes, the Perella Gallery.
Yeah.
The RAO Theater, and their newly celebrated athletic turf fields.
It's a really aggressive portfolio for a regional institution.
It's staggering. But, looking at that list, it raises a bit of a red flag for me.
How's it?
Well, it's easy for me to understand funding a shiny new building. Everyone loves a ribbon-cutting ceremony for a high-tech cybersecurity lab. You get your name on a plaque, you take some photos, but a portfolio this broad could easily turn into a sprawling mess of pet projects.
That's a very common trap, yeah.
Right. So I noticed they specifically highlight a mix of project-based giving and recurring support. Why is that mix so critical? Like, if you want to be an anchor, why not just put all the money into the big, flashy capital projects that everyone can see when they're driving down the highway?
Because a multi-tiered approach is really the only way to ensure holistic, sustainable growth. A brand new athletic turf field is a wonderful visual asset. But a turf field is entirely useless if you don't have the recurring support to fund the athletic programs, the coaches, and the equipment that use it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Same with the RAO Theater. It's a beautiful room, but it's just an empty room without the recurring funding for the arts programs, the faculty, and the staff required to bring it to life. This is honestly where so many well-intentioned philanthropic efforts fail on a local level.
Right, they fund the brick and mortar, but they forget the operational reality.
Exactly. I like to think of it as the hardware and the software.
Oh, I like that.
They are funding the hardware, the physical labs, the theaters, the fields, through project-based giving. But they are simultaneously funding the software, the faculty development, the scholarships, the daily operations, through recurring support and endowments.
And for anyone listening who might not spend their days reading nonprofit balance sheets, we should probably clarify what an endowment actually does here, because it's a massive piece of this puzzle.
Definitely.
An endowment is essentially a financial engine where the principal donation is never touched, right? It's invested so the interest generated from it can fund a scholarship or a faculty seat forever. It's permanent software.
That's a great way to put it. By explicitly focusing on that mix, ensuring the endowments grow alongside the capital projects, the foundation guarantees that the college doesn't just look impressive on the outside, but actually functions at a high level on the inside year after year.
It prevents the empty mansion syndrome. You buy the huge house, but you can't afford the electricity to keep the lights on.
Precisely. And what this reveals is a deep understanding of institutional longevity. You don't survive 50 years by just cutting ribbons. You survive by paying the electric bill on the culture you've built.
Well said. But, keeping the lights on in that new RAO theater doesn't really matter if there's no one sitting in the seats. The facilities are just the hardware. We need to talk about the software, the actual people whose lives are altered by these spaces.
Absolutely.
Because after visualizing all these impressive physical labs and cultural centers, there is a fascinating pivot in the text here. The central argument shifts entirely away from budgets and buildings. It insists that the real story of the foundation is found in people.
Which brings us to the human element, the true metric of a civic anchor. They explicitly outline 4 different faces of their impact.
Yes, and this is where the mechanics of community building get incredibly relatable. The first face is the student. This is the individual receiving access to life-changing educational opportunities, like the scholarship recipient who maybe couldn't have afforded to be there otherwise.
Right.
The second face is the faculty member. This is the teacher who is now equipped with better tools and technology to actually do their job effectively. The third is the family, specifically a family attending a performance, an exhibition, or an athletic event on campus.
And the fourth is the community member,
Hmm.
The person who lives in the region and views FM not just as a school, but as that civic anchor.
Exactly.
What's crucial here is observing the causality between these four faces. This isn't just a random list, it's a progression.
Hmm.
It notes that donors are motivated by visible local impact and a desire to see, quote, visible change in the lives of others.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. It's like dropping a stone in a pond, the ripple effect. Like, think about the second phase, equipping a faculty member. When the foundation funds advanced training or new technology for one professor in that cybersecurity lab, they aren't just helping one person. That professor applies that upgraded skill to 100 new students every semester for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
That is thousands of lives impacted by one targeted grant. The community is effectively compounding the interest on its own human capital.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what we are really looking at is a fundamental redefinition of philanthropy.
How so?
Well, traditionally, especially in American culture, we often think of philanthropy as a wealthy benefactor, quietly writing a massive check in the shadows to get their name on a building. It's a very solitary act.
Right, very top down.
Exactly. But this framework positions philanthropy as a shared act of achievement. It explicitly states that this 50th anniversary belongs to every donor, partner, volunteer, and advocate.
It frames giving not as an isolated act of charity, but as a collective choice.
Yes, these people are actively choosing to build a stronger future for their shared geography. They are buying into that multiplier effect you just described. When a local family who maybe has no one actively enrolled in classes can still come and attend a play at the RAO Theater or view an exhibit at the Pirelli Gallery, the college has ceased to be a utility. It has become their town square.
Wow, yeah. Proof that generosity creates momentum. That's a direct concept pulled from this, and it is just so powerful.
It really is.
It shifts the entire dynamic from charity to investment. If you're listening to this and you've ever donated to a local cause, you know the difference. You aren't just tossing a few bucks to help a struggling student. You are investing in the economic and cultural vitality of your own zip code. You are building the town square.
And that shared ownership is what builds trust. Momentum in a community isn't just a buzzword, it's a measurable shift in civic psychology. When a local business owner sees their neighbor funding a scholarship and then sees that student graduate and stay in the region to work at a local IT firm using skills from the new cybersecurity lab, that creates a loop of verifiable trust. Generosity creates momentum because it provides visible proof of concept to the community.
Which is exactly what the foundation is banking on as they look ahead. The multiplier effect of the past 50 years directly sets up the urgency of the future. The conversation pivots quite dramatically from honoring the past to how they are mobilizing for the next half-century.
Because as they celebrate in 2026, they make it very clear that the work is not finished. In fact, it might just be beginning.
Right. They stress that the needs of students will continue to evolve and the opportunities for innovation and cultural enrichment are only going to grow. And they are actively inviting the community to celebrate this golden milestone together.
That's a very proactive stance.
Yeah, they aren't just putting out a nice press release and calling it a day. They're basically daring the community to hold them to this and get involved right now. They've put all their cards on the table.
They really have.
If you're listening to this and you want to see exactly how this blueprint functions on the ground, they want you to reach out. You can literally drop by the campus at 2805 State Highway 67 in Johnstown, New York, zip code 12095. Or if you want to speak with them directly, you can call them up. It's area code 518-736-3622, extension 8020.
They even have a specific email set up for this push. It's fund.dev@fmcc.cine.edu.
It's a remarkably open, transparent invitation. It signals confidence in the model.
It really does.
But here's what I want to ask you about this transition into the future. There's a specific sentiment expressed here that this moment is about gratitude, but it is also about momentum. How does an organization, after 50 years of undeniable success, prevent a massive 50th anniversary from just devolving into a giant nostalgic victory lap?
That's the danger, isn't it?
Right. How do they keep the foot on the gas when everyone is just ready to eat cake and celebrate?
To answer that, we have to look at the philosophical anchor of this entire celebration. They cite the philosopher William James, quoting, "The great use of life is to spend it on something that will outlast it."
Wow.
This is how you avoid the nostalgic victory lap. You reframe your past achievements entirely. They're looking at the new athletic turf fields, the healthcare simulation labs, the financial technology center, and they are deliberately not treating them as end goals. They're treating them as Proof of concept.
Ah, they are using the past to validate the future.
Exactly. They are using 50 years of accumulated trust to say to the community, look at what our collective generosity has already built. Look at the momentum we have created.
Yeah.
By pointing to the visible, tangible impacts, that multiplier effect we discussed,
Yeah.
they validate the investments of past owners.
Right.
That validation, in turn, secures commitments for an evolving, unpredictable future. They're essentially saying, we spent the last 50 years building the foundation. Now we have the infrastructure to build the skyscraper. They're leveraging gratitude to fuel momentum.
Leveraging gratitude to fuel momentum. Because, man, the world of 2026 is vastly different from 1976. When this started back then, nobody was thinking about funding a state-of-the-art cybersecurity lab or a financial technology center.
No, of course not.
Those concepts didn't even exist in the local consciousness. They couldn't have predicted those specific needs.
And this raises an important question. Can they predict the specific needs of 2076? Absolutely not.
Right. So they aren't asking donors to fund a specific rigid vision of the future. They're asking donors to fund the capacity to adapt to the future. They're asking them to fund the anchor, knowing full well that the nature of the storms will change.
That is the essence of a lasting legacy. It's not about locking an institution in a time capsule. It's about giving it the flexible resources to evolve alongside its community. You build the endowments, you establish the recurring support so that when the next technological or cultural wave hits in 20 years, the institution has the financial agility to meet it head on.
So what does this all mean? As we wrap up this deep dive, let's just summarize the incredible journey we've been tracking. We started with a bold, proactive idea back in 1976, the belief that a community college could be far more than just a transactional utility for degrees.
Yeah.
Through the creation of the FMCC Foundation, we watched that idea take physical shape through targeted strategic philanthropy. We saw traditional state funding get that turbo boost to create high-tech labs, stunning galleries, and vital community spaces.
Real, tangible assets.
Exactly. But more importantly, we decoded how those physical spaces, the hardware, transformed the human landscape. By equipping faculty, elevating students, and uniting families, they created an undeniable economic and cultural multiplier effect. The true power of a community college isn't just in the diplomas it hands out, but in the vibrant, proactive civic ecosystem it builds for everyone who lives within its reach.
And I think it's vital to recognize that in an era where we are constantly overwhelmed by global information, doom scrolling and massive abstract problems that just feel impossible to solve, there is a profoundly grounding value in local targeted philanthropy.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It is a powerful reminder that you don't have to change the whole world. You can create deep, visible, lasting change right in your own backyard. Thank you so much for exploring this blueprint with us today.
It really does shift your perspective on what local institutions are truly capable of when a community decides to invest in itself. But as we leave you today, we want to give you one final, intriguing idea to ponder on your own.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think about the civic anchors in your own town. We talked about how the foundation is looking toward the evolving needs of the next 50 years, highlighting technological leaps like their new cybersecurity lab. So here is something to think about. If the last 50 years of this community's legacy were built heavily on physical spaces, gathering spots like theaters, healthcare simulation labs, and athletic turf fields, how will the civic anchors of the next 50 years adapt to a world that is becoming increasingly virtual?
Oh, wow.
Right. What does a lasting local legacy actually look like when the community itself goes digital? Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.